Welcome to the Call Your Shot podcast, your weekly sports recap podcast where we break down the hottest headlines, dissect the latest injuries, and serve up our own hard-hitting analysis of the past week in sports. But that's not all. We're not just here to talk about the past, we're here to predict the future as well. On the Call Your Shot podcast, we boldly predict the outcomes of the upcoming week's games. Hello and welcome into this edition of the Call Your Shot podcast. I'm going to be your host today, going solo dolo, just me, Drew Moore, in the club, grinding it out with you guys today. So, as you can see, Mr. Harris is not here, so we're going to do the best we can. He's usually keeping me in line and keeping my mind straight and on track. So, if I get off on a tangent like I already am right now, blame him, not me. So, some things we're going to get into today are going to be recapping some of the games we had over the past weekend, as well as previewing the games that we have coming up in the divisional round. I'm going to save the Seahawk talk. No need to rhyme there. Didn't mean to rhyme, I should say. But I'm going to save the Seahawk talk for when Mr. Harris gets back, because I'm sure he has some hard-hitting analysis to break down on that one there. I'm very sorry if you guys do end up with Dan Quinn, by the way. And then we'll polish it off with a little bit of a Super Bowl preview of who Mr. Harris has going to the Super Bowl and who my final pick is to win the Super Bowl. But to start off with first, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping, as always. So making sure that you're downloading the podcast if you're finding any value at all. Or if you just want to support the podcast in general, feel free to download it. Preferably, you would also listen to it, but even just a download is plenty. Takes you about half a second, just click a button, and you're there. If you don't know where to find it, you can always go over to our YouTube channel, or you can go over to our Instagram account as well. We have links to all of our content in the description as well. So, without further ado, let's get into a quick recap of the games that we had over the past weekend. So the first game that we had was the Browns taking on the Texans. And oh boy, did CJ Stroud look dominant. The Texans went in there and absolutely dismantled the Browns 45-14 in an absolute shellacking of the Browns in their return to the playoffs. It was not pretty for Joe Flacco out there at all. I honestly wanted to say that I didn't see this coming, but I really did, as we were on the Texans money line on this one here, plus 120. It's a great little way to start the day off, seeing Joe Flacco throw pick after pick. And honestly, he should have had more than just the 2 picks that he did. But, 2 is fine for me. Ultimately, CJ Stroud and Ryans are just exceeding expectations beyond belief at this point. They're playing with house money, and it really showed in this last game. And there was the analysis of home versus road splits with the Browns, and is that really a real thing, or is it just kind of a wash of the numbers and a little messy there? Turns out to be a real thing, actually, very real, because on the road they are second to last in overall EPA per play, only to Philadelphia, which, as you can tell where they are right now, they're also in Cancun. So probably not a good place to be. However, at home, the Browns are number 1 in the NFL. Obviously, this game was played on the road for them. And this is the result, 45-14. CJ Stroud went in there, 274 yards passing, 16 of 21 completions to attempts. His longest pass was 76 yards, and that was an absolute bomb to Nico Collins there, and end up with 3 touchdowns as well. And it wasn't just CJ Stroud and just slinging the ball around with Nico Collins. He got everybody involved as well, and you also were able to see the variety of schemes and how they're able to get open a lot of their receivers, as opposed to the I'll get into it later, but a lot of the high school routes that the Steelers are running still, even after Matt Canada has left. But um, yeah, Texans exceeding expectations beyond belief, and it's been it's been beautiful to see. Alex wanted to make sure that we mentioned that C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love might be potential, you know, franchise players for both their teams. Obviously, easy to say that right now for the Texans because C.J. Stroud obviously going to be. No, I shouldn't say obviously. You never know, but more than likely going to be Rookie of the Year. If he's not, then I think there needs to be an investigation. Quite frankly. Um, but then in terms of, Jordan Love, I I mean, yeah, maybe. It's still tough to say about that one though. But if we are moving on in a very nice segue into the next matchup, we'll go to the Cowboys and the Packers as Jordan Love, the future franchise quarterback, according to Mr. Harris, of the Green Bay Packers, succeeding the likes of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, was able to go in there to the Big D, Dallas, and put up 48 points against what was thought to believe one of the most elite defenses in the league, in the Cowboys. And I didn't really see that at all. I don't want to say this was the writing on the wall the whole year, and we shouldn't really be surprised at this point because they always do this, right? This is classic Dallas football here, right? They go in, they have a great season, they're very content with having a great season, and they just put up a dud every year. And quite frankly, I'm not sure how Jerry Jones hasn't had like a revolution or a revolt, I should say, against him. Because it's not like, oh yeah, it's just a one-off, like it happened only a couple times. No, this happens time in and time out because of his greed, and he's not willing to give up control to other coaches. So he gets coaches that he can puppeteer around and play his players in a way that he wants to play them. That's why you got Mike McCarthy, who, quite frankly, is not a very good head coach, and you saw that. Not like LaFleur was running circles around this man. It was borderline, like it was just so embarrassing if I'm a Mike McCarthy fan or if I'm a Cowboys fan. And like I said, though, the writing was kind of on the wall, though. Their defense was honestly kind of a little bit flugazy. It was inflated by a lot of the teams that they had played before, and when you saw them play against the Seahawks around Thanksgiving, like giving up 35 points to Geno Smith. I mean, I don't want to be critical of the Seahawks while Alex isn't here, but you know, anybody giving up 35 points to Geno is not a good defense in my opinion. And I mean, sure, Josh Allen, he's great, 31 points or whatever, but that was also more along the lines of the beginning of the resurgence of the Buffalo, or I guess the middle of the resurgence of the Buffalo offense. And I just every year with this team, it's interesting too because they're pretty much stuck. Like they have the contract with Dak Prescott, and if they cut him or if they trade him before, I think it's like June 1st or so, if that ends up happening, they owe him $61 million. They're on the hook for $61 million if they get rid of him before June 1st. If they opt to sign him, which they will probably end up having to do, $59 million. So like pick your poison. I mean, it's a couple mil, but personally, I would love to have a couple mil extra in my bank account. And with as frugal as Jerry Jones is, every dollar counts for that man. So obviously, they're not going to get rid of him, and they're already talking about bringing back McCarthy for whatever reason. I don't know. Dak is not it, and I'm not sure that a lot of other teams are going to be, opening their hands to the idea of having Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback next year. So that'll be interesting to see for sure. Alex wanted to make a note on this as well. He said the Cowboys are a playoff disgrace, and Jerry Jones being content with a good regular season team that goes one and done every year. And basically, I can't disagree with him. It's year in and year out, and I think it's hilarious every year. You have those Cowboy fans out there, and at this point, it's a joke because you have those Cowboy fans out there. This is the year. This is it. We're gonna do it this year. We got the team. I've seen it. I've seen many teams before. I've been watching it since I was a little boy, and we're gonna do it this year. I tell you, I swear. What happens? Make the playoffs. Losing the playoffs, first round. And if I do recall, I did call that one last week as well. Even though I was very high on them, I probably sounded just like one of those Cowboy fans. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. Not gonna lie, I was drinking it. It was good too. But all good things must end, and the Cowboy season has come to an end. So next game that we have is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Kansas City Chiefs were one of the other picks that we had going into this game, and that was the one that Alex was most confident with, taking the Chiefs on the money line before the line started moving. Chiefs went in there, and it wasn't really as close as the final score might have indicated, 26-7. And I mean, say what you will about Miami playing in the cold, Tua playing in the cold, whatever. It's a lot more of the Dolphins not being able to play up to their competition, only beating up on bad teams because they're bullies. And quite frankly, I just think that they would have had a better chance in this game if they had a lot healthier defense. Their defense, I think they were down to like fifth string linebackers, and that's not gonna work in this day and age, especially not at this point in the season. That's not gonna work. And I mean, you saw what the game plan was. Linebackers are basically all out, and defensive line was pretty banged up as well. All right, what do we do? 24 carries, Isaiah Pacheco, 89 yards. Sounds good to me. Just feed him. And especially with, it being, what was it, like -20 wind chill? Like, I'm not going to catch a ball with -20 wind chill. I got frostbite on my hands. My fingers might come off. Patrick Mahomes, he's slinging that thing. So, and you saw a couple times too, Kelsey couldn't even catch the ball. Yeah, a couple drops out there. And like as sure-handed as Kelsey is especially compared to the other wide receivers that are on Kansas City, that was very surprising to see. Maybe he was just nervous for his first playoff game with Taylor Swift out there. Who knows? But that's a sign of a loyal girlfriend. I'm not gonna lie. Going out there doesn't. Well, I mean, she was in a very warm suite, so that also helps a lot. In terms of stand-up performances, Rashee Rice. I want to say fan of the podcast, but he probably doesn't even know who we are just yet. But our last prop that we did on the show, actually, last prop I did on the show wasn't Rashee Rice, but the last prop that Alex did on the show was Rashee Rice. And that was when Rashee Rice first started to break out. Mr. Harris was able to identify that And he was able to exploit it not only in fantasy and break the hearts of basically the whole league, but he was also able to identify this in the betting market as well. They grossly underestimate the the trust that Mahomes has in Rashee Rice because, I mean, if you throw to somebody and they can't catch anything, I mean, every time you pass it to them, you might as well have just thrown it away. I'm not going to keep on throwing you the ball. I might hand you the ball, Isaiah Pacheco, 24 carries. That'll work. That's pretty low risk. I'm not throwing you the ball. So you have 12 targets to 12 targets to Rashee Rice. You have 10 targets to Travis Kelce. The next highest targeted player, 3. Mecole Hardman. Oh, he probably caught, like maybe all 3 of them. No. 1 catch. And it's not like the other 2 passes were like out of reach either. Right here. Right in between the numbers. Dropped it. That's why you see 12 targets, 10 targets, and then everything just falls off a cliff from there. I mean, this was the biggest problem that I had with the Chiefs going into the playoffs and also in the beginning of the season and honestly throughout the season as well, is that their offense hadn't clicked just yet. And I mean, is this the offense clicking? Maybe. But I still need to see a little bit more, maybe in a little bit better conditions, then they would have had a better offensive performance. But I do think that this is good enough with the defense that they have right now. What they were doing earlier on in the season, where they were barely able to move the ball and Mahomes was making, honestly, piss poor decisions, that's not gonna win the Super Bowl. That's not gonna get you even to the Super Bowl. Quite frankly, it's barely gonna get you to the playoffs. I think that honestly, the only reason why they were able to make it this year to the playoffs was because of all the injuries that happened and all the terrible quarterback play. And it was more a product of it's still Mahomes, it's still McKelsey, Mahomes Auto. It's still Kelce, but it wasn't the same dynamic that we're used to seeing with the, wide open receivers running downfield and actually catching the ball. A lot of drops. Like I said before, led the league in drops. So if they're able, or I should say, if they're going to do it this year, it's going to have to be because of the receivers stepping up. And I don't think that Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce are going to be enough. While 2 receivers are hard enough to scheme for, I think that they're still missing that third piece. And if Isaiah Pacheco can have some repeat performances like this, where, he's getting those carries and he's getting that yardage, I think that then they're going to have a more complete offense. But I mean, it's just been inconsistent the whole year. So, I mean, and I don't see why now things would change if we have an 19 game sample size of who they are at this point. So that's just my thoughts. And as far as Tua goes, I mean, it's you're only as good as the situations that you're set up in, and he was not set up in a very good situation to succeed, quite frankly. Yeah, sure, Waddle and Tyreek Hill were healthy, but at the same time, they weren't able to get any of the running game going, and that's like their biggest thing that allows them to open up the passing game. When they're getting Mostert going on the ground, when they're getting Achane or Achan, whatever it is, going on the ground, when they're getting those two guys moving and motoring down the field, that's what opens up the pass game. That's what opens up their play action game. That's what opens up Tyreek Hill streaking down the field, Waddle crossing over the middle, etc., etc. And they didn't have any of that going, and so their offense wasn't moving. And this is the result: 26-7, Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so moving on into the Rams and the Lions. This one was actually probably one of the better games of the weekend, as the rest of them were pretty much blowouts. So Rams and the Lions, the reunion of the Matthew Padford era in Detroit, as well as the reunion of Jared Goff and the Rams. So this game was, I think it went about how most people thought it was going to go, quite frankly. It was a pretty high scoring game. It was close pretty much throughout the game as well. Both sides of the offense did their job. And boy, oh boy, how good is Puka Nacua? My God. That man, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised next year in fantasy football if he goes top 10, honestly. 10 targets, 9 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown. And a touchdown. I don't know. I mean, it seems like this guy came out of nowhere. Some people saw it coming. The 99% of people didn't. But Puka Nacua, bravo, man. Bravo. You earned it this year. I personally will be drafting you next year. You earned my trust. But you didn't earn the win. And honestly, I mean, you can't say that things come down to only one play or whatever, right? But the sack that they got on, I believe it was like third and like 5 or something like that, third and manageable. They got sacked on that play, and that pushed them out of field goal range because they got it was like a 20, like 15, 20-yard sack. And that pushed them just far enough out of field goal range to where they had to go for it on like 4th and 15 or something crazy. And obviously didn't complete it, ended up losing by 1. And here we are. They covered, but they didn't win. We took the money line and got screwed. But, is what it is. Happens. And, we took the money line with the Texans. So juice was covered. Didn't really matter. But takeaways from this game, I mean, you got to feel like the Lions are on auto fade for the next game against the Buccaneers, right? They haven't done this since before I was born, and I don't even think that. Yeah, actually, and when the last time that they won a playoff game, it was also not even like the divisions weren't even the same names. Like that just tells you how old that well, I can tell you how old I am, but also it tells you how long it's been since they've had this kind of success. And they were booing Matthew Padford. I'd boo him too. But for all he did while he was with the Lions, to be loyal to the Lions, I mean, I guess for old time's sake, I guess you could say, or for formality's sake, you kind of gotta boo him, because he left the team or whatever. But I just think that the Lions, while it's a great story, I don't think that their defense is good enough to get them to the Super Bowl, quite frankly. And honestly, man, that's tough. I want to say that they might not even make it to the conference championship, quite frankly. It's just, it's tough. You see how they move the ball on offense, and in the first half, But then they get a little tight. Then they're like, okay, we got the lead, guys. Just don't F up. Just do not F up. Everybody do their jobs, do it right, do it perfect. And then they're focused on being too cute, being too perfect. And then they start seizing up, and then that's when the other team starts coming back. And that's when things start getting hairy. And we saw that with Matthew Padford, as he likes to do. Pad those stats, 367 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I honestly think that if Kyren Williams doesn't go down in this game, it might be the difference between, that 1-point loss and maybe even a 2-point victory. Who knows? Maybe even a 6-point victory if they're able to get a touchdown, an extra touchdown out of it as well. So I do think that Kyren Williams was a major factor when he went down. And this is the result, 24-23 Lions. And one other note with the Lions is that Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, I think he had like 4 interviews. So he's a busy man at the moment, and it's hard to believe that all of his focus has been solely on game planning for the Buccaneers. So I think that might also be a thing to take note of when they're playing against the Buccaneers. Well, I guess now it's going to be tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's see if Alex had any notes on this game. He did not, but he does on the next one. So going over to our next matchup, then where we had the Buffalo Bills taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this game got moved all over the place, up and down, left, right, and sideways. Not because of the wind, though. It was moved because of the snur outside and also because of the wind. I lied. There was like 50-mile-an-hour gale force winds going on, crazy kind of stuff. And I thought that we were being super sharp. We played the under in this game. As soon as it opened, we were able to get 39.5, and the total at one point dropped all the way down to, I believe, like 33. And, got to be feeling good. That like 6 points of closing line value, amazing. And then they're like, okay, there's actually not going to be 1 foot of snow. There's going to be 3 feet of snow. And there's actually not going to be, 30 miles an hour wind. There's going to be 50 miles an hour wind. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. They're not going to be able to do jack shit. And then they're like, yep, actually, we're going to move the game. Yeah, this is not safe, and we got to move it. I get it. You got to move it. It's not safe and everything like that. But then, of course, the weather is a little bit better, and the scoring output, of course, goes up because they're not forced to only run the ball and only run the clock, because that would be the only option in a 50-mile-an-hour football game. And quite frankly, you probably wouldn't have even been able to watch the game on TV or even in the stands because of all the snow that was coming down with all the wind blowing around too. So, but into the actual game. See, this is why Mr. Harris needs to be here. Keep me directed on track. But with the actual game, 31-17, we had the Bills in this matchup. And the moral of the story is Steelers without Watt equals loss. That's pretty much what happened. They weren't really able to get any pressure on Josh Allen. Josh Allen was able to sit back and relax, throw 3 touchdowns, and was only sacked twice. No big whoop. 121.9 passer rating, 21 of 30. Solid game. The thing that I wanted to note, though, is the resurgence of, well, maybe not resurgence, but the involvement of Stephon Diggs, because prior to this game, we had talked about this actually too. His target share was like, oh yeah, he got 5 receptions, he got 3 receptions, 2 receptions, 1 reception, and also his snap count was also decreasing as well in just about every game. And it was pretty bizarre because there was no rhyme or reason. There wasn't anything on the injury report or anything, except for this week there was, with his, I believe it was toe, but he's fine now. But it's good to see that Stephon Diggs is still him, still out there making plays. They were without Gabe Davis in this game. He, I believe, is still going to be out coming up in this next game here, but they were able to get the job done without him. I don't think that, at least, let me rephrase that. I hope that the Steelers aren't going to go with Mason Rudolph next year, thinking that he is going to be some sort of answer to any kind of solution or any kind of problem that they have. Because I don't care what he did in over the past like 3 games or whatever it was where he was playing out of his ass. He was playing like godly football. But I've seen Mason Rudolph play. That man cannot play football. Quite frankly, there's a reason why he was a not a second string, third string quarterback for a team that had arguably one of the worst starting quarterbacks in league history in Kenny Pickett. So, for Mike Tomlin's blood pressure's sake, I hope that Mason Rudolph is not the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year in any fashion. I don't even want him to be a backup. I don't care. Last but not least, we had the I'd like to apologize to all my Eagle fans out there. We had the Eagles taking on the Buccaneers, and I want to talk about a fall from grace. Going to the Super Bowl last year, all the way down to, barely making it into the playoffs. They started out the season 10-1. 10-1. Their win total was 11.5. They started out the season 10-1. They finished the season 11-6. Some things you cannot make this up. Like, that is wow. But I just think it's kind of crazy that Nick Sirianni is already on the hot seat for this game and the season and how it unraveled towards the end. There's conversations about how he lost the locker room, and that's kind of why the play was declining throughout the season. And maybe that was it. You saw every other play, it seemed like AJ Brown was like, if it if it was a run play or if it was a pass play to anybody else or if it was just anything that didn't involve him not blocking, he was mad. He was bitching and griping on the sideline. Give me the ball. Okay, well, if you're healthy and you have your, weak ass knees over there, maybe, just maybe, they can get you the ball. But a wise man once said, the best ability is availability. Man didn't even play. However, Devonta Smith, he is him. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 148 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, don't matter. 148 yards, 8 receptions. Good enough for me. And let's see where AJ Brown is on here. Yeah, interesting. DNP. Okay. Quite frankly, obviously he's good. Obviously he's great. But if you're the Eagles, do you really want to deal with all of that drama in your locker room? Because you can tell that it was one of those things where they were almost forcing him the ball. And a lot of the turnovers were because, okay, well, he's mad. We got to make him happy. Okay, just throw him the ball. Oh, shit, there's a receiver. Or there's a DB there. Pick. Oh, no, it's a pick 6 now. Okay. And all because the diva wanted the ball. So, it's one of those things where you kind of got to balance out, is the juice worth the squeeze? And quite frankly, not that he's really getting up there in age, he's actually pretty young, but his knees are like, once you start having meniscus problems, it's pretty much downhill from there. Because especially if you're only doing an arthroscopy where they're just kind of cleaning it up, it's never going to be the same until basically you retire. And you can get it completely replaced. I don't know. I don't want to go down that road. It's a long tangent and a lot of windy twists and turns in there. Stay on focus, stay on track. There we go. So, moral of the story is Eagles, Flugazy. We were able to get 3.5 when the line kind of ticked up there. We bought the extra half point just for some security because a little scared, not gonna lie. I was like, oh, the Eagles, it's kind of scary. Should have went money line, but whatever. Profit is profit. Not gonna complain. Baker Mayfield went in there, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 119.8 passer rating. And quite frankly, while he did put up those stats, a lot of those were inflated by the high school JV team that was playing on the other side and the Philadelphia Eagles. The tackling on that team was about as bad as it gets. And I've seen Columbia River football. I've seen some bad tackling before. Let me tell you something. Some 3A sports. Not great. Let me tell you that for sure. But I will say that I can't think that they're going to get rid of Nick Sirianni. Like, if they're really doing the whole "what have you done for me lately" kind of act, that's completely BS. And I don't want to say that there needs to be an investigation, but like, he literally took him to the Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden he loses the job. No, I think that he'll be back next year, but I do think that they're going to probably blow it up, honestly. I don't think AJ Brown's going to be back. I don't think. I think Jason Kelsey was already basically talking about retiring. He was heavily considering it. Fletcher Cox probably not going to be back. I mean, it does help they have Jalen Carter. It does help they still have Devonta Smith. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I just don't see next year being a very good year for the Eagles. So you can mark that down. And you can bring it back up when they probably win the Super Bowl next year, because I just said that. So, and I had said that Alex had something on the last game, but I completely blew over it because he's not here and he can't stop me. So, going back to what Mr. Harris had, which I guess kind of ties into what we're going to get into next, which is the divisional playoff round. So Alex is talking about how this game coming up for the Chiefs and the Bills is going to be a must-win game for Josh Allen, because they're always just so close. They're always just one play away, half inch away, 13 seconds away, or whatever it is. They're always just so close, but they never get the job done. And he's basically saying that this is it, Michael Jackson, If they don't do it this year, they have to blow it up and break everything down, start over again, because the pieces that they have are aging and a lot of them are getting hurt. And quite frankly, they're probably not going to be back in time to do anything productive next year until later on in the season, because quite a lot of their injuries were ACLs. So, yeah, I mean, do I agree with the sentiment? Yeah. Am I still going to take the Chiefs? Yeah. And quite frankly, for that same reason. So going into this game, you had the Bills as 2.5-point favorites. And it's finally at home for the Bills, which helps, which is great. But it comes at a cost because now they're playing against the Chiefs after they've had all these injuries added on top of the injuries that they already have. So they're also another team that has a depleting linebacking core, similar to what we saw last week with the Dolphins against the Chiefs. And we saw how well that went for the Dolphins. And Gabe Davis is still out. And Rasul Douglas, questionable. Johnson, questionable, their cornerback. It's going to be a tough one, honestly, for the Bills. But in terms of market dynamics, is the way I like to break down some of these games. Going over to the matchup splits here. So we have the Bills currently getting 60% of the bets, but only going into the matchup splits, we have the Bills getting 60% of the bets and 67% of the handle, which means that while it is a very public play, there also is some maybe a little bit of pro money on the Bills as well, pushing up that handle number. However, notice how the line hasn't moved since the opener. Open up 2.5, still 2.5, but only 40% of the bets are on the Chiefs, telling me that there is more respected money on the Chiefs, not allowing that line to move up to 3, which is also a key number. And throughout the season, what we've kind of seen is that typically that 3.5 sometimes is a little bit of bait. It's being thrown out there because of the idea that most games land on 3, home field advantage is 3, and 2.5 is not a great number to have if you're the underdog. So being a little psychological here, that being like with that, you ideally want to be on the side of the house. Does the house always win? No, but more often than not, they do. Give me the Chiefs money line plus 124. I mean, we've seen this movie before. Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I believe he's like 8-1 ATS. And I mean, Josh Allen and his turnovers. I know I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth, but Josh Allen and his turnovers. He didn't have any last week. And if I say true to the way I like to handicap with regression and everything like that, I feel like that's definitely got to come back to the pack. And quite frankly, the Chiefs have had a solid defense all year, and that's what's been backpacking them all year. So I don't see why that would change now. Just like how I was saying, I don't see how the Chiefs' offense is going to change anytime soon because we have a large enough sample size of who they are and what they're going to be. Same thing goes with the Chiefs' defense and Josh Allen and his poor decision making. So going over to some stats that I have. So in my database that I have the Chiefs as middle of the pack offense, 16th overall. But then they have the number 3 ranked defense. So I'm going to bank on their elite defense this year. That's been backpacking them throughout the year, like I said before, as well as, middle of the pack offense. According to the EPA per play stats, they also have the 10th ranked offense compared to the Buffalo Bills, 14th ranked defense, I should say. And then when it comes to success rate, the Chiefs are 9th, whereas the Buffalo Bills are 17th. I mean, the show just goes on and on from here. Drop back success rate, Chiefs are 5th, Buffalo Bills 18th. So I don't know. I just see that the Bills have a lot of injuries on the defensive end, and quite frankly, that's where they've been most vulnerable throughout the season. Their offense has been fine for most of the season. That they've been able to put up stats, they've been able to put up numbers, but it's just been timely interceptions and basically fumbles at the worst time possible. I think that this is one of those things where, we saw last week, played pretty much perfect football, couldn't do anything wrong. I think that comes back to the pack this week, make mistakes, and the defense is going to give up. I don't want to say a lot of points, but they're going to give up points to Mahomes to where they're not going to be able to keep up with them scoring. And I think that Kelsey's going to get loose. I think that Rashee Rice is going to have a big game. And I mean, Pacheco maybe too, but I don't really have much confidence in him doing that in back-to-back games, especially because the Chiefs' running game is 31st in the league in rushing EPA per play. So, but I do think that, if the Chiefs are going to have success, it's going to be through Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. I know, breaking news, Captain Obvious checking in here. But quite frankly, that is the only way that they're going to get the job done. And technically, you have the Bills on a short week because they played on Monday as opposed to being having their game played on Sunday. So, all that to say, give me the Chiefs money line. Going into the next matchup, we'll go in reverse order since we started at the bottom and now we're here, as my good friend Drake would say. Going to the next matchup, we have the Lions taking on the Buccaneers. The current bet splits right now are the Detroit Lions, 58% of the bets, and the Buccaneers with 42% of the bets. When it comes to the handle, the Buccaneers are getting 50% of the handle, whereas the Lions are getting 50% at the handle as well. I believe, like I said, that this is the perfect fade spot for the Lions. They just pulled off, one of the biggest wins in their history. I guess matching one of their biggest wins in history. And I mean, they didn't pour out the Gatorade last week. I wish they would have. But I just think that, it's a big moment for the team and it's an easy letdown spot for them. And six points is a lot in the NFL in this stage of the playoffs, or really in any stage of the playoffs. It's a lot. And I mean, like I said last week with Baker Mayfield and him putting up those stats were kind of inflated because the tackling was just so bad and it shouldn't have been as much as it was, quite frankly. But at the same time, the Bucs have actually had a pretty solid offense throughout the season. And I mean, even looking over the back half of the season, the Buccaneers, if we go down here, so I can pull this up. I'm going to do some crazy stuff here. I'm going to share my screen. So as you can see here, in a second, the Buccaneers, 10th ranked EPA per play over the past 9 weeks. And quite frankly, Detroit, if we were to go over to the defensive rankings over the past 9 weeks as well, EPA per play, let's scroll down and find the Detroit Lions all the way down there at 27th. I mean, let's not overcomplicate things, right? Let's make it easy. Let's make it simple. Let's make it quick. Let's make it dirty. You got to take the Buccaneers in this situation. Buccaneers, as ugly as it might be, as gross as it might sound, Baker Mayfield. I want my money behind you, Baker Mayfield. Like, that just doesn't feel good. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Patrick Mahomes. I want my money behind you. That sounds good. I'd do that all the time. But the Buccaneers, it's gross, it's nasty, but that's why I want it. That's why I'm taking the Buccaneers this week to at least cover. I don't know if they're going to win. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if they're going to win. But I do love them in this spot to cover. Perfect letdown spot for them. Banking on the offense of the Buccaneers here. And Mike Evans, we talked about before. I believe that he's going to have a pretty solid game and potentially go off. I think it'd be worth it to play his prop up to 100 yards. I'd take that prop, Mike Evans, to have over 100 receiving yards. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that the Lions are going to have much success going against a rush defense that is, quite frankly, again, one of the best in the league. So how do the Buccaneers do when it comes to stopping the run? Right now, when it comes to looking at that same website, RBSDM, running backs don't matter. Looking at the past 9 weeks, Buccaneers 8th in the league when it comes to EPA per rush, and so I just think that they're gonna struggle out there to move the ball, and if they're not able to get the running game going, that's when things get kind of hairy for the Detroit Lions, as it does for the Miami Dolphins. So I think it'll be a good game for sure. I think it'll be close. I at least hope that it's within 6 points, because that is going to be our play. Moving on to the next game that we have here, we have the Packers, Mr. Harris's Packers, taking on the 49ers. So, I mean, this game and also the next game are pretty much the same handicap. Take the favorite. Take the Lions, or take the Lions. Take the Ravens. Take the 49ers. Don't overcomplicate things. I personally, I am not a Jordan Love truther. I was high on them to start off the season. They did great to start off the season. Jordan Love, he was 16th in EPA per play for quarterback positions. And then all of a sudden, he decides that over the last 9 weeks, he's going to be the number 3 quarterback in EPA per play. Like, I'm sorry, but nobody just overnight just flips the switch like that and goes from being a league average quarterback to being top tier elite quarterback. Maybe they go from average to good, maybe that happens. But to go from mid tier to top tier, top 3, I'm sorry. No, it's a no for me, dog. Along with that, you're telling me, you are telling me I'm getting the 49ers that are only getting 38% of the bets and 51% of the money. I am fading the hell out of the Green Bay Packers. It is the easiest play of the week. I'm not going to say, put all your money on. No, that's stupid. 1 unit play, only flat bet. Otherwise, you're going to go broke trying to do some crazy stuff. But that's borderline disrespectful, honestly. For the Packers, oh my God, I'm at a loss for words, honestly. 62% of the bets, 62% of people believe that the Packers are going to come out on top. Or I guess not come on top, but they're going to cover 9.5. And I honestly just don't see it. If we go over to Pro Football Focus, I'm going to try and share my screen again here, do some crazy stuff. When Alex gets back, I'm going to have to show him this little thing or two, about a thing or two. So over here on Pro Football Focus, if you sort it here and look at who has the largest advantage on the offensive line when it comes to pass protection, and you look at who has the largest disadvantage. That's interesting. I see the Green Bay Packers all the way down there with a negative 43% disadvantage on the offensive line when it comes to pass protection. Wow. Like, I just don't think that Jordan Love is going to have much success sitting back there going against a Kyle Shanahan led team with time to prepare, and people are expecting him to have success. No. It's a no for me, dog. And also, fading the trendy dog, bro. All these things are lining up too well for me to not pick the 49ers. And if that wasn't enough, if I go over to what my numbers have, let's see here. Let's see what we got over here, Drew. What are we saying? So I have a few different models, but my main model has me going with the 49ers. I have them as 11.2 point favorites. So I even still think that this line is too short. On another model that I have, that one's honestly kind of crazy, has them as 15 point favorites, 14.9 if we're being technical. But quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they win by 2 touchdowns. Wouldn't be surprised. And very similar handicap with the Ravens and the Texans game. So keep it short, keep it simple, keep it sweet. 33% of the bets on the Ravens. 33% of the bets. Man, you guys, I get it. Love the dogs. Dogs were barking last week. I just don't see it happening again this week. The Ravens and the 49ers are just in a tier of their own. Honestly, the ratings that I have the Ravens about 1.5 point favorites. 1.5 point favorites against the 49ers against on a neutral. So, do with that what you will. But I just think that, it's the Ravens, the 49ers. There's about a 2.5, 3 point difference. 2.5 point difference between the 49ers and the next best team there. And then everybody below that is just kind of fighting for third, fourth, fifth. And then below that is just a cliff. So I think it's a great story for CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. But all good stories must end, like I said before. 67% of the bets. Crazy. Fade the trendy dog. Easy. Lock it up. And if we go back over to our beautiful offensive line breakdown that we have here, we can see that there is a negative 13% disadvantage on the offensive line when it comes to pass protection, and a negative 17% disadvantage when it comes to run blocking as well for the Houston Texans offense. Like I said before, it's a no for me, dog. It's a no. That covers just about all of the games that we have going on this weekend. Let me see real quick if our boy Mr. Harris had any other closing remarks that he wanted to make sure we got to. No, I think we did pretty solid, covered everything for our first solo podcast there. Did pretty good. One last thing I'd like to polish off the show with is going to be the predictions that we have for the Super Bowl. My prediction for the Super Bowl is the Ravens over the 49ers. Ravens win 24-22. Lamar Jackson finally gets the monkey off of his back and gets that W. Both the brothers going to be coming home with championships in the Harbaugh household. So I think that they're going to get the job done finally. And is it well deserved in a year where pretty much it was a survival of the fittest because of all the injuries that occurred to big time players and big time stars? I still think it's deserved. I mean, because ultimately it's the NFL. Players get hurt, things happen, and ultimately that goes down to having the best overall staff. And don't forget about us physical therapists out there. We're part of the staff too. And if your team can't stay on the field, well, you're not doing your job. But like I said, that's going to do it for us this week on the Call Your Shot podcast. My name is Drew Moore, and be sure to like, rate, subscribe, do all the good things that you would do for any of your other podcast hosts out there, or hop on over to YouTube. Give us a subscribe over there. Go ahead and click that like button if you're so inclined, or if you're on any kind of podcasting software such as Apple Podcast or Spotify or iHeartRadio or whatever. It's available in all those places and then some. Be sure to hit that download button. It goes a long way. Feel free to give us a 5-star as well. And with that, Mr. Harris will be back next week. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with me with another week. And if you are, I'm sorry, but it'll be fantastic. And you'll love it because you won't have a choice. That's all I got for you guys this week. I'll catch you on the next one.